It's the same thing. It's Tolkien. It's mashed potatoes. It looks the same. Might be a little bit lumpy in places, a little bit runny in places, look a little bit different, but it's the same thing. I was reminded yesterday that if we're to love Tolkien, if we're to enjoy his books, we have to understand how it fits with modern day audiences. See, there's a good, fun Twitter account I follow that, brightens your day a little bit with a little bit of Tolkien joy. Things like this, Valentine's Day cards based out of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films, but fun things that can really just, bring a smile to your face. But we're not allowed just to bring smiles to faces. We have to inject everything that is our political ideology into it. And so what do we get? We get this tweet, but they're both so old, Gandalf can barely remember his passwords and even forgot that people called him Gandalf while Saruman betrayed the free peoples of Middle-earth and led an insurrection that stormed Helm's Deep. You can see how they're equally bad choices. No, Gandalf isn't Gandalf. Gandalf is Joe Biden. Saruman isn't Saruman. Saruman is Donald Trump. And so we inject our political ideologies into it. And of course, there's going to be pushback against this. On his other Twitter account, he says, the replies to this post are sadly, predictably filled with some of the worst kinds of hate and bigotry this app has to offer, all attempting to ratio it to prove a point. You see, why should he discuss when by the simple force of your simple mind, you can use simple words to turn that person into Sauron? And no, not this sexy Sauron they all love, but this Sauron. And it's not just this guy. We have YouTube grifters, magazines, Looper, Screen Rant, The Guardian, The Hollywood Reporter, Forbes, and of course, the Tolkien Society. Because Tolkien's not worth reading unless we're talking about Gondor in Transition, a brief introduction to transgender realities in The Lord of the Rings. Or we have to deal with Something Mighty Queer, destabilizing cis-hetero amatonormativity in the works of Tolkien. You see, anything that questions their perfect confidence of what's good and proper and moral in this 21st century entertainment for modern audiences is simply not allowed. It's not allowed to have any place on any stage for any reason whatsoever. They write these talks that we have like in the Tolkien Society because they can't accept Tolkien for what he is. They're like a picky 5-year-old kid who loves mashed potatoes, loves the taste, loves the saltiness, loves the butter, and then he realizes that it's made with sour cream, and he hates sour cream. So now he has to hate the mashed potatoes too, and he will not eat any more mashed potatoes unless we remove that sour cream and change it. If you find a little too much masculinity in Tolkien, well, you gotta hate it unless you can change it. If there are too few women in Tolkien's writings, well, you gotta hate it unless you can change it. If it's not diverse enough, too few ethnicities in Tolkien's works, well, you better hate it unless you can change it. And then the kicker is they act surprised as we're the ones that point out the change, right? We're the ones that are tasting those mashed potatoes where they added tofu and yogurt and flour and buttermilk into it. And we're saying, this is not the original thing. This is not the mashed potatoes that you were used to be making. And they point out, how dare you notice the changes that we've made? How dare you say this? Look, it's the same thing. It's Tolkien. It's mashed potatoes. It looks the same. Might be a little bit lumpy in places, a little bit runny in places, look a little bit different, but it's the same thing. And they point out that when we are making the obvious statement that you are the one injecting your desires into it, and then you're calling us out for being the bigot, for being the racist. No, you're bigoted against what Tolkien originally wrote. You're reshaping him into an image that you want. You change the characters, you change the story, you change the message, you infect it with your modern views. You change all the parts that make Middle-earth what Tolkien wrote, and you put your own spin on it. And at first glance, again, it might look like what we loved, but instead of the sour cream, it's tofu and oat milk. It's Halbrand and Arendir. And instead of Elrond, we get a politician architect. He was a military leader in Middle-earth. Instead of Gandalf the Grey and Saruman the White, we get Gandalf the Biden and Saruman the Trump. And when we notice the changes that you're putting into it, you call the rest of us the worst possible things that you can imagine. And here's the what's great. There's no evidence. It went through the whole Twitter feed. There's no evidence anywhere that there's any bigotry or hatred. It's just a claim. It's just a straw man. It's just a veil to hide behind because you don't want to deal with your own bigotry and hatred of Tolkien. See, you're the ones that noticed Tolkien wasn't good enough for you. You're calling it intolerable. You call Tolkien despicable. You're the ones that said Middle-earth was small-minded because you can't accept that it isn't diverse enough. Fake people on Twitter, grifters on YouTube, journalists at The Guardian, at Hollywood Reporter, at Forbes. You are changing Tolkien. Don't look at us as if we're the ones with the problem. You are changing him. You are changing his characters, his story, his works. I enjoy Tolkien for what he wrote, for the world he created, for the languages he invented. Lord of the Rings isn't about anything but itself. It has no allegorical intentions, general, particular, or topical, moral, religious, or political. Because that's exactly what Tolkien wrote. In a letter to Houghton Mifflin in 1955, he said that exactly. He said, "It is not about anything but itself. Certainly it has no," and that "no" is italicized, "no allegorical intentions, general, particular, or topical, moral, religious, or political." What he's saying is that Middle-earth is as you see it, as he wrote it. He's saying that you need to accept it for what he wrote it as and stop injecting your own small-minded political ideologies, your own 21st century skewed moralities into it, and enjoy it for what it is as he wrote it. Thanks for listening. I don't usually jump into these rants. Usually I'm into Tolkien deep with our podcast, Exploring Tolkien. Just look up Exploring Tolkien anywhere on the internet. Go to exploringtolkien.com. You'll find it. And I hope you join us there. Catch you later.